Hello there again and welcome. Ryan Nordahl here with Epic Whitetail Habitat LLC. You know, we're getting into one of my favorite times of the year. We're getting into the late season. Our gun season here in Wisconsin wound down this past weekend. I was successful on the last morning of the hunt, and now I still have an open archery buck tag for Wisconsin here, and I plan on filling it, and I will be out in the woods. And one of the things that I'm going to take advantage of, and the thing I want to share with you in this video is I want to share my top 5 tips for late season success. Second rut, it is a real thing. We're going to be about 28 days after the primary rut, which is usually about, primary rut takes place every year, roughly the 5th of November through about the 12th, 14th of November. That's when their primary rut. Yes, we're into our post rut. We're getting into those late season evening feeding patterns now again, back into them. The second rut is real. We're catching those first doe fawns that'll be coming into heat. Maybe some of those does that didn't settle the first time around, coming back into cycle, back into heat. Some does that simply didn't get bred the first time around. No, it's not as harsh of a rut, if you will, for lack of a better term, as the primary rut is. Primary rut, you cannot beat that time of the year to be in the woods. But the second rut is real. Just with previous experience, especially last winter, about this time, those young doe fawns were coming into heat, and it was great buck activity early on in December. Which brings me to my second tip: cold weather versus warm weather. Now, it's true, we've been coming off of a strong period of warm weather over our rifle season, warmer than typical. We were right about average, which was low 40s, but just warmer than average hunting season weather. And today we had one of those sharp cold fronts come in, dropped the temperature probably 30 degrees from what it was this past Saturday. We're now at Monday, the 30th of November, when we're recording this. And I would say it dropped about 30 degrees or so. And I actually had a buck come in this evening. They've been coming in, the bucks that I'm after, target bucks that I'm after, have been coming in about anywhere from about 30 minutes to roughly 90 minutes after dark, after I've exited the stand. I had a feeling tonight with the cold weather change that come in, the high winds that we had yesterday and overnight last night, as they calmed down throughout the afternoon, this afternoon, I knew today would be a good day to be in the stand. Maybe for that back-to-back bucks. You know, one with a gun yesterday, one with a bow this evening. And it almost did happen. I didn't get it on video. I'd love to have it on video. But 25 yards, the Big 10 that I'm after, he was there. I shot for 20, held it right on the point of his elbow, and I missed low, 25 yards. And that's just the way it is. He ran off about 40 yards, didn't know what happened, had no clue what happened, went back to picking through the leaves, whatever he was getting. I know there were some pretty good white oaks in that area, so he's probably picking acorns. And a couple does come through, and he just moseyed on his merry ways. So it was exciting, it was fun. He had no clue what had happened. We'll be back after him again shortly here. Cold weather versus warm weather, and it can be vice versa. You can go through a long stretch, prolonged stretch of very cold weather. That day when she gets above 25, you know, up into the 30s here in December toward the end of the month, those deer would like to be on their feet in that warm weather too. Again, going through a long stretch of cold weather where they're hunkered down, not moving a lot, you can see a lot of activity that first warm day after an extended period of cold weather. Cold weather is my favorite, there's no doubt about it. But you got to be prepared for that cold weather sit. We're going to get those cold weather sits, those below zero in the late afternoon sits, maybe some high winds going along with it. As I recall, I remember a couple years ago being about 20 degree below zero actual air temperature with about a 20 to 30 mile an hour wind, bringing those wind chill levels way down. And with a heater bodysuit, you know, having my layers on, I always dress in light layers. That way I can pack layers into my backpack, because generally the stands I'm hitting are a long walk back into the woods, because I'm getting back into those deep, thick bedding areas, and they're long walks in there. And I don't want to be sweating due to big, heavy, bulky clothes. I still dress in light layers, buy light clothing that I can pack in, pack out if I have to. I don't want to sweat. But one of the most vital pieces of equipment I have in my clothing arsenal is my heater bodysuit. You cannot beat it. The shell, if you're familiar with Carhartt jackets, the shell of that device is similar to a Carhartt jacket, but it is very quiet. I know a lot of people on social media question the zipper on it, how loud it is. Once you know what you're doing, you know how to handle the zipper and everything. It's very quiet. It's easy to slip in and out of when you need to make that quick movement to grab your bow, to grab your gun, whatever. It's well worth the investment, folks. Yes, it's expensive, you know, straight up buying it, but you got to think long term when you're making these kind of investments. I've had mine now this is the 9th season that I've had it. It's saved so many hunts where previously I would have gotten out of the tree too early, or just simply wouldn't have gone to the woods at all. Now I'm sitting longer, going when the conditions are right, being able to tolerate the cold a whole lot more. Which brings me to point number 4, focusing on the food. One of the most important things there is we come into the post rut, into the second rut. You know, in the second rut is going to bring those does to food a lot more. You want to be hunting those does just like we were during the primary rut. But focusing on food, focusing on high energy crops such as corn. You cannot beat corn for a late season food source. You really can't. Soybeans rank right up there, but corn is, to me, is number 1. And where it's legal, you know, if you're baiting, where it's legal, corn doesn't hurt anything. But there is such thing as rumen acidosis, subacute rumen acidosis, or SARA, as many dairymen like to refer it as. And that occurs when too high of energy feed, concentrated feed, such as corn, broken down in the rumen, one of the 4 chambers of the stomach on a deer. It's where the big fiber breakdown comes into play and everything. And too much corn consumption by the deer can actually shock the rumen and start killing off the good bacteria, and eventually have adverse effects on the lining of the stomach of the rumen part of the stomach. And how do we avoid that? If you must feed corn, if you have to feed corn, if you're one of those guys that just has to do it, you know, I've done it in the past, I'll admit it. I like using corn, but I also like to mix about, you know, here in Wisconsin, if you can bait, you're allowed a 2-gallon minimum, or maximum, I should say, 2-gallon maximum. I like to mix in about 1/4 to a 1/2 cup of sodium bicarbonate with it. It'll help buffer the stomach of the deer that we're feeding. I also like to mix in black sunflower seeds with, you know, the black sunflower hulls on them. Give the deer fiber. Another thing you can focus on is woody browse. And if you don't have a lot of woody browse, one of the easiest things to do, especially here in west central Wisconsin where I'm from, is we have a lot of silver maple, soft maple. Deer just love the buds on soft maple. Maybe that's where we could do some hinge cutting, create a browse plot. It is a real thing, it works well. The deer absolutely go nuts over them soft maple buds this time of year if you can get it to the ground, or if you have successional growth growing already. Popple buds are another one. Even some hickory buds, even some oak buds. In that early successional growth it's coming. They're already forming their buds for next year. And it's going to bring me to point number 5, sleeping in. Now, I don't sleep in a lot. I'm up every morning at 3 o'clock. I've got a lot of work to do before I start my day outside. You know, I'm in my office writing habitat plans, going through some of my goals, reviewing my goals every day that I need to accomplish, writing down the daily goals that I want to accomplish, the weekly goals, and ultimately my ultimate goals that I do have written here in my office. But sleeping in, there's no need to hunt in the morning this time of year, unless you're watching your cameras like I do quite a bit. But most of my cameras and the activity I see, the primary activity is shifting to that afternoon pattern. So for me, in my own past experience, even this year going forward, there's no need to get out into the woods early in the morning unless you have one pattern coming back to a bedding area or something. You can slip in quick, slip out of there at the end of the hunt later in the morning. But for the most part, it's going to be okay to start sleeping in. You've been hunting hard all season long. Now you deserve a break, and the late season is where you get that break. You're going to see more deer activity focused on the food later in the afternoons, early evenings. So those are my 5 top tips for late season success. And if you're fortunate enough to get out and do some late season hunting, incorporate these 5 steps into your program, and you possibly could have the success you're looking for.